In the spirit of Halloween, what is the scariest, paranormal or not, experience you have ever had?
I once had to work a very late shift at the funeral home to prepare a body for a viewing the following morning. I think I finally finished my work around midnight. Anyways, it was winter, and I ended up getting snowed in at the funeral home. I had to stay the night until plows came early and to plow out. Let me tell you, it's fucking creepy sleeping in a funeral home, knowing there are 20 dead people in the basement. I was a campus security guard. My job was basically to make sure no one was in the buildings past midnight. It was 1 a.m., and I was going to clear the old psychiatric building. This is one of the only building on campus without lights constantly on, and on the job we aren't supposed to turn on lights cause someone who sees the lights on from outside might call the police and waste everybody's time. So I just had a flashlight. I was patrolling the top floor and it was fucking spooky. This was the building the campus bought from the city in the early 1900s. That was a psych ward that the campus turned into a psychiatric building and eventually a biochemistry building. I heard a door creaking down the hall behind me, and when I went to shut the door, a fucking 6 tall man was in there in the dark, so I yelled and fucking bolted. As I ran out of the building, I ate shit on the last flight of stairs and tumbled down. Unfortunately, I landed right as my boss, an on-duty police officer, was coming in. She came in because of the scream. I told her there was someone upstairs, then she walked down with a wooden statue carving of Sacagawea. What it was doing there I don't know, but that shit sucked ass. I grew up in a house on the west side of Chicago. This house had been built at about 1890. I figure at least one person has died there. When my brother was about 5, we were living on the second floor, renting out the ground floor to my aunt. The third floor was mostly burnt out and uninhabitable. One room had been fixed for my sister to live in. Well, we were watching a movie in the living room. And my brother asked me to walk him to the bathroom. The bathroom was maybe 15 feet from the sofa, but you had to pass the stairwell to the third floor to get to it. He asked me to please take him to the bathroom, and I told him no because of its proximity. He begged me and I still refused. I asked him what his problem was and he said, "There are people screaming upstairs, and they are on fire." I walked him to the bathroom. Years later, after moving out of state, my dad confessed that someone had burned to death in that fire, but he didn't tell us because he didn't want to scare us. A few weeks I was walking my dog late at night, and I could see a woman a block or so away coming towards me on the same sidewalk. Nobody else was around, the street was deserted, just her and me. As she got a little closer, I could see that she was walking slowly, was wearing shabby clothes, shuffling and dragging a foot. Her head was low to her chest, and her hair was hanging, covering her face. When she was about 20 feet away, I started to get nervous. She definitely looked odd and was moving purposefully and quicker than I thought. I was frightened now, but told myself I was being silly and overreacting. Stay calm, I thought. I tried to casually pull my dog to head off to the right, out of this woman's path. But no luck, my dog wasn't having it. When she was about a foot away, she lifted her head a little and croaked, "Hello, dear," and passed me on her way. She must have had some sort of disability or something, but I swear to God she looked just like a fucking zombie and scared the living shit out of me. Edit. Graham, when I was a kid, the cabinets in my parents' house would slam every night after my father fell asleep. Then about 7 years ago, after gutting the house and adding an addition, I would see a figure in my bedroom doorway at very odd times. Then sometimes over my shoulder during the day I would see a man in a black suit with white hair. At this point I'm seeing this figure so often I start to question my sanity. The final night he bursts out of my closet and I finally see this terrifying old man's face. I close my eyes, scream, and I wait. When I opened my eyes he was gone. The image has been burned into my mind since. I don't see him again after that night. Now a few years later I'm home from college for my fall break and go to see a movie with my family. My brothers and I drive home separately from our parents, and being near Halloween are telling scary stories. I tell my experiences with the old man. My youngest brother, who was 16 at the time, starts to freak the fuck out. He had seen the man running at him from his closet the past 2 nights in a row. We have never spoke of it again. I grew up in a small town and lived out in the country. My mom and I were coming home from Walmart really late one night and decided to take the back way home. I still had my learner's permit, so I wanted to take a road with less traffic. Anyone who has ever lived or been to the country knows how creepy these roads can be at night. I was going around a curve right before a 1-lane bridge, so I slowed down in case I had to stop. Out of nowhere, this woman jumps in front of me to the driver's side of my car and starts pounding on the hood of my car. Her mouth was moving, but I couldn't make out what she was saying. My mom started freaking out and told me not to stop and just keep driving. I kept going and we both looked back to see where she was, and no one was there. To this day my mom and I still remember it clearly. Turns out there's apparently a legend about a woman who died around the bridge and supposedly can be seen sometimes late at night. I get goosebumps to this day just thinking about it. I work security by night and a few years back I was stationed at an old army barracks just outside my city, which now housed an international tech company. So one night I'm heading upstairs to the canteen, and when I get to the top of the stairs, I take a look to my right through the small window of a door. Well, if I was in a cartoon, I would have done that running in the spot thing trying to get away, because when I looked through the window, there was a guy staring right back at me. I was already on edge because the building is hundreds of years old and I was expecting the worst, but felt relieved when I went back to check it out and realized it was just my reflection. I used to volunteer at a nursing home where we had several instances where new residents accurately described former residents down to specific nightgowns or color of glasses, who I and the staff knew had died in that room, and complain about them coming into the room at night. Then once I was walking through the hallway and it was normally uncomfortably warm inside, but I felt a chill and goosebumps. One of the CNAs said I had just walked through a ghost. I couldn't get warm again for the rest of the day. There were flickering lights and TVs turning themselves on. Several of the staff were from the same Southeast Asian country, and they were talking about ghosts and disrespect for the dead so much that management had someone come in to do a candlelight ceremony, and this lady with crystals and dreadlocks came in to do a sage brushing. Things calmed down after that. Lights stayed on better and the residents seemed calmer. The forest around my house is haunted by a square. Me and my sister have several times now over the years seen a white squarish shape quickly moving through the trees from left to right. Very fast enough you don't register it until it's gone. It's weird as fuck. Other things happen in our house too, but at least the square is outside. I'm not sure how freaky it is, since it's not paranormal or anything, but when I was about 7 years old I went on a walk with my babysitter. We were walking back a mile or so to my house on a fairly busy road, and about halfway there she says we should play Simon Says. At first we walk faster, then skip, and then jog lightly. Then she says Simon Says run as fast as you can. Simon Says turn here. I was slightly confused, but played along. As we turned down the driveway I looked back and saw two guys chasing after us, one with a bat and the other with a knife. We ran up to a house and some old people living there let us in thankfully. At the time I didn't grasp how fucked up it was that we were getting chased, and I still have no clue why they were. TLDR 80s punks with weapons chased myself and my babysitter when I was a kid. Every time I have watched The Lion King someone I know has died. Happened 3 times when I was a child. Always happened the same way. We'd be watching it as a family, and then the phone would ring during the movie, and we would receive the news of a relative dying. No one in my family has watched The Lion King since. Around 15 years? 15 years old. I had just got home from work, so I went to my bedroom to change out of my work clothes and get ready for bed. I'm in the middle of undressing when I look to my bedroom window to catch my reflection, and I see a man's face. I dropped to the floor and turned off the lights, scrambling to get dressed, still watching the window. The face is gone, but I'm still watching, then a fucking camera. No face, just a camera pointed at me sitting on the floor. I bolt from my room and tell my mom and brother. My brother went outside, and our ladder from the backyard was lying there. But nobody around. Couldn't sleep for a year after that, just stared at that window. Haven't thought about that in years. Thanks Reddit. When I was a teen I worked at a cable access studio and made mini movies. My neighbors gave me their father's old video camera. They told me he never used it, but it didn't seem to work anymore and had a tape jammed in it. I fixed it up and on the tape was hours of him driving around at night and filming people through their windows. Nothing overly sexual was on it, but there is something unsettling about seeing peeping Tom footage of a guy eating dinner with his family or over 20 minutes of some girls dancing around in their room. I was watching scary movies and I got hungry so I decided to go out for a late-night Taco Bell run. I lived alone at the time so it was quite a shock as when I opened the door a hand was reaching in after me. I slammed the door on the offending arm and ran and grabbed a butcher knife. After closing all the blinds and sitting in the dark for an hour I worked up the nerve to look outside. I was shocked to find a bunch of Chinese food menus for a new restaurant scattered all over the ground. My brother and I were probably about 7 and 5, respectively. We used to wake up every weekend and play computer games before my parents woke up. One day, we turned on the computer and got an eerie message that was directed to us. It said, "Hello Kid A and Kid B, this is your computer talking and I am Olivia. Do not run and tell your parents, they cannot help you now." Turns out my dad had programmed the computer to say that upon startup. This was mid-90s. I've had multiple times when I've woken up in the middle of the night and was sure I could see a figure in my room until I turned on my bedside light. Usually this scares me a bit, but my most memorable one was waking up thinking I saw some short figure at the end of my bloody bed and saying, "Fuck off, I'm trying to sleep," then returning to burying my face into the comfort of my pillow. Seems like it worked. On my previous job when our building was still under construction, the only floors that were occupied were the first, second, fifth, sixth and seventh. One time I was alone inside the elevator going from first to the sixth floor when suddenly it stopped and opened on the third floor. Normally I would just disregard it, but rumors were all over that a ghost child was playing around on the vacant floors. So I pressed the closed button as fast as I could. When it closed I heard noises like someone was tapping their fingers on the walls of elevator. My family told me this. I had fever very often when I was young. The medicines didn't help. One day, a stranger on the street asked my mum if I was always sick and who was the elderly following me. My mum was confused as there was no elderly nearby. The stranger pointed into the air and described my dead paternal grandmother's look, the hairstyle and clothes she wore to her grave. My dad was from a different town, and my mum would have known it if the stranger was a mutual friend. The stranger instructed my dad to call my grandmother to go back. My mysterious fevers stopped. When I was a kid, I woke up in the middle of the night to my bed shaking. Normally that would scare the crap out of me, but instead I was just kind of annoyed. I rolled over and muttered, "Stop it." The shaking stopped immediately. Then a male voice speaks right beside me, saying, "Sorry." That's when I freaked out. I'm pretty sure my childhood house was haunted. I was with my little brother home alone when we suddenly heard a creepy voice from the other room saying, "Panda Panda, come here. I want to talk to you." We didn't know who or what it was and immediately ran upstairs. While we were running to our room, we heard someone nearby say, "Do you boys think you can run from me? I see everything." At this point we were terrified, locking the door to our room, grabbing our mini baseball bats and crying. We were certain we were going to be killed or eaten by some monster. Then, it happened, a loud bang came from the closet and the monster sprang out. We both screamed, my brother fell, and I threw the bat at my dad wearing an clown mask and laughing hysterically. Turns out he was behind the whole thing. First, he had put all the cordless phones in the house on speaker and said he was leaving to run some errands. Then, he proceeded to sneak back into the house, hide in our closet, and scare us. Thank you for watching. Like +1 attraction, subscribe +1 to health.